Con Prime recibes bombillas en un día. Edison estaría orgulloso.
Orgullosísimo.
Recibe rápido los esenciales diarios. Prime lo cambia todo.
Talk shoes. Recorded live.
Hey, it's Mike, and it's Old Religion Dystopia, Knowing versus Belief. And, well, I'm having an impromptu interview with somebody that I've been following lately. His name is Dustin, and he has a YouTube channel he just started, and it's called CRYPT PTSD, and I will spell that correctly after our recording. Yeah, just got a call from him, and we're like, let's do a show. So, all right, man, let's do it. So, Dustin, how you doing, man? This evening.
Doing all right, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem, man. Impromptu show here. Yeah, it's been a weekend for me for 3-4 interviews. That's a lot. Different topics too. So, but this one, folks, is we're going to be talking about a subject that I'm interested in. I have no personal experience in it. I do have a big brother who swears that he and one of his sons saw Bigfoot or Sasquatch in Northern California. And saw them. It was moving and picking up a log across the river there. This is in I think Butte County, or it's close to Paradise, Chico, that area, and quite a few reports of sightings of Bigfoot. Now, I've spent time out there in the mountains, and the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me was some dude was growing pot, chased me off the mountain. I had no idea he was doing that with a shotgun. It's about the closest thing that ever happened to me, but it's always been an interesting topic for me. I think it's always been an interesting topic for everyone who learns about this, maybe since a child. And so I want to interview folks who have this experience, because Dustin, there's quite a few folks that have this experience. And what intrigues me about you, man, is that you actually are so motivated that you started your own YouTube channel. Once again, it's called CRYPT PTSD. It's on 4 videos so far, and I've listened to all of them. He's so far he's been interviewing folks near to him that have similar experiences, or who know him, who don't have experiences. I mean, episode 3 is a very interesting one where he's interviewing a friend of his who's a SWAT team member, and a guy that seems like he's no nonsense. And although he questions what you saw, he still cared enough to come on the show. And I think that's kind of these experiences that we do have, these, whatever it may be. I kind of, Dustin, wish I could have one, but then I listen to a guy like you, and I go, like, well, maybe I don't want to have one. You know what I mean? It's one of those things, you know. I mean, yeah. I mean, I did as a young guy. I did quite a bit of camping, but I never. I guess maybe it was because it was never in the right location. I never went looking. So, but if you look at here in Ohio, man, we got the grass man, right? Is what it's called. Is it grass man? What is it called? It's grass something. It's in southern Ohio.
Ohio Grassman, I believe. Ohio Grassman.
And I need to get back and talking to another guy from from Indiana who swears he saw the Mothman. I'm going to be having an interesting interview later on this week about the Ohio snake mound and the giants and all that of old. But there's still a lot. You know what? I want to believe there's still great mysteries out there. It makes our life just a little more interesting. But I find it very interesting that an everyday guy like yourself is motivated to start doing a channel. I guess the first question to ask for you, Dustin, is why? What motivated you at such a topic to start a YouTube channel that's based upon basically Bigfoot right now, right?
Yes, I mean it's a little bit of everything, but so far I've only had Bigfoot encounters on the show. But I guess what motivated me was kind of a combination of things. My encounter in 2014, as I've said many times, it turned my world upside down, and I didn't get into it until the following deer season. I had a gut pile stolen, and that got me looking into it. But to be completely honest, the shock that, in my family and my group of friends, I am one of two guys that if somebody has a question about firearms or hunting or animals, they come to me. And these very same people that would believe me if I said I saw a 100-point buck that had a skunk's tail, but yet they didn't believe me when I said I saw a Bigfoot. And that shocked me because these people know me. They trust me. They trust me with their kids, their wallets, but yet me saying that I saw something that is out of the realm of possibility, they just couldn't swallow it. And then I quickly learned that not only did I have a blindfold on my entire life, but the society does as a whole. And the only way these things could get away with this is if they hid in plain sight. And so I started looking very close to home, around towns, at gun ranges, and I found obvious sign that people just never see, because I've learned that just like a motorcycle, why are there so many motorcycle fatalities each year? Because people aren't looking for them, so they hit them. They're looking for cars. Well, it's the same thing. You don't see what you're not looking for. And if you, like when I saw what I saw, I thought it was a monster. I didn't know it was a Bigfoot. I had nothing in my brain that I could compare it to. And, I saw Finding Bigfoot in the TV shows, but it wasn't real. It wasn't here at my home. I did nothing wrong. I just drove home one night, and it changed my life forever. So I guess that would be the motivation behind it, is that I saw that, my loved ones and, people who see cryptids, they suffer because they get put in a box. And in that box, they're by themselves. And a lot of them don't ever find help or don't ever deal with it. And two, that these things are literally right around civilization, and they hide in plain sight. And it's so obvious once you start looking and seeing certain things that you can take people out and, show them, explain this to me. How did this happen naturally? And you start to see their eyes open. So I guess those would be the two reasons behind my motivation for starting the show.
Yeah, I mean, I've had personal experiences in my life that definitely, the trauma of it is the shocking incidents. It has changed my life and redirected me. So I can understand. There's a lot of things that are hidden in plain sight, and it seems that we're conditioned and trained to look for such things. It's only through opening one's eyes, like you said, and looking. As a young boy, I trapped and hunted, and but I never experienced anything that was quite like what you experienced. A gut pile just disappears.
Yeah, explain that.
I can't. But you can. Tell us. It's a guy like you. You just had an interview with somebody else who's very interesting. Is Mark Zasky? Is that how you pronounce the last name?
Yes.
Zasky?
Yes.
And he's down in Florida, and I guess the different type of a different variety of this type of creature. And I guess the first question I want to ask you: do you think that this is an animal, biological animal, or do you think it could be something else, like some kind of? I know it's kind of sounds a little strange, but you've heard it, I'm sure already, if you've paid attention to what's going on. There are folks out there that feel it could be something like a spiritual, some kind of other dimensional type of creature. But what do you think?
Well, I'll start off by saying that this is just my opinion, and my opinion, as I get into this further, will grow and change. So anybody that has a opinion on the other side of the fence, don't hate me. We need both sides to keep each other honest and to actually get somewhere with this. But my true opinion is that these are animals. Now I've heard them speak. I do believe they are. I've always thought of them as kind of a ape 2.0. They're a lot like an ape, but they're something else. They're more intelligent. They have speech. Now, orcas, killer whales, they have language. The scientific community is reluctant to say anything other than human beings use language, but there's every indication that they use language. And, orca whales, they hunt humpback whales, baby humpback whales, and they have different pods from different parts of the world that speak different languages, but yet they are able to come together and hunt together and communicate with each other. So, just that intelligence is amazing, that's something that we don't understand. And I believe that these things have a language. They have speech. I've heard it. It was not just grunts or moans. It was definitely saying something to me. And I believe that they may be human-like. I don't know, DNA-wise, if they're more of an ape or a human or something else. That I don't know. But I do believe 100% they are an animal. They leave tracks. And I know a lot of people say, when they're traveling through portals, that they choose to leave those tracks to throw you off or to get your attention. But even though you don't have a perfect footprint, you have what's called sign. And if you've done any tracking, sign could be a rock flipped over to where you can see the wet side of the rock that's been stuck in the ground, and something walked past and flipped it over, and now it's up. Or it could be, leaves that have been pressed against the earth, towards the end of the winter or the beginning of the spring, and when something walks through there, it makes little scuff marks. If you're following a trail, if you're a good enough tracker, you can continue to follow it, unless these things, jump up in a tree or jump over to the side. But that's one thing I've been working on lately is tracking these things. And I do believe 100% that they are a living, breathing, flesh and blood creature. And I don't think that there's anything paranormal about them. And again, I could be wrong. I'm new to this, but that, as of right now, is my opinion. But those that have other opinions, I'm not going to shun or turn down. I want everybody to come on the show no matter what they think.
Sure. Yeah. This could be probably a poor analogy, but it's from based on my own personal experience. let's talk about like a flying squirrel. I don't know. Have you ever seen a flying squirrel hunting and all that kind of stuff or at night? You seen one? Do you even have them in Missouri? Because here we have what's called a flying squirrel.
We don't have flying squirrels here, but I've seen videos of them. But no, we don't have them here in Missouri.
So here's the thing. It's probably not the greatest of examples, but it is a good example because if one just simply does a little bit of research of the wildlife of the area that you're from, and where I'm from in northern Ohio, we have flying squirrels. And I've actually at night went out deliberately to try to find one, and couldn't find one. But I did find one. One day I was standing at the back porch of my mom's place, and I looked up, and right there in the tree was a flying squirrel looking at me. This little thing with its big eyes, and it's like, oh my gosh, there really is a flying squirrel. But most people in where I live, if you would tell them, did you know that there's flying squirrels around here? They would say no.
Yep.
They wouldn't have an idea. So if something that is basically common knowledge should be common knowledge to those, or at least if they were interested, would find out, or where most people don't even know it exists. Why could something like this be the case too? The biggest thing, I guess, would be for many people is why is there no photographs and all that kind of stuff, which is a big question that needs to be asked, But saying that doesn't mean diddly squat, because there are there's still things out there that the cameras just don't pick up very well. So, and we're talking about creatures that are usually found in the woods. I know there's a lot of people out there that are faking it and making a joke out of it. You can go buy a suit if you want, but I don't think you had that experience. If you did, and this is what you're trying to do to find attention, you might want to see a shrink.
Exactly.
You might really want to see a shrink for the fact that you're faking this stuff. Is this the best way to get attention? You know what I mean? I don't think so. So, let me ask you to share your, because you've had several experiences. It sounds like so. What was the very first time that you started to notice there was something not quite right in your environment? What was around you?
Well, I will say, I'll talk about my sighting, but even after my sighting, I didn't put the pieces together. I didn't until that gut pile got stolen, and then I realized once the blindfold was lifted that I've had experiences my entire life. And that's part of me doing, the first 3 shows I did is, to try to jog people's memory, because, if you hunt or spend time in the woods, I can almost guarantee, you've had something odd that's happened to you, and you've probably forgotten about it because you just chalked it up to, well, that was odd, and went on about your day because you couldn't explain it. And, now that once I saw what I saw, it brought me back. So I've had stuff happen before, but getting to my sighting in 2014, I will keep it short, so I won't go into as many details. You can take as much time. You can take as much time as you want. Okay. Well, this is your moment. So one of your moments, and I don't want you to feel like you're constrained about anything. So there's no commercials. Okay. I'm not doing it for money. So in 2014, I was coming home one night, and I was driving down the driveway, and it was our driveway is almost a quarter mile long. It's a pretty long driveway. It leads to the door of our house, and it's shaped like a hook. At the point of the hook is where our driveway is, where the house sits. So you park at the point of that hook, and then get out and you walk in the garage door, and then walk through the garage and walk into the kitchen. And I'd done this 1,000 times. I'm an avid hunter and outdoorsman, so every single night I whenever I would round the curve of the hook, before the curve, I would veer over to the right side of the road. And I would do that because the path continues to go straight and leads over into our east field. So this was a nightly ritual. I would veer over to the right side of the road to keep my headlights down there on the path as long as possible. And if I saw nothing, I'd cut it real sharp. And most of the time, I've worn out a spot in the grass from doing it so much. So I was doing what I always do, driving down the driveway. I'm in an 89 GMC pickup, and I see something dart across the path. It was a brownish color, and there was like a little glint. I mean, just a glint of eye shine that was like a reddish color. And it just darted across the path. So immediately I think deer, but at the same time, like, you know, when you have a thought in your head and you're like, you know it's wrong, and it's like you're debating in your head, but so I saw it, but I knew it wasn't a deer because it looked thicker and it was very smooth, and the locomotion of it was smooth. So when deer run, they bounce, you know, and this thing just, boom, shot across the path. But I'm thinking deer, and so I'm coming to a stop, and over on the right, there's a semi-truck trailer, and I'm seeing something flashing. Okay, well, it looks like two eggs that are kind of flashing, and so my mind immediately thought the reflective tape off of the trailer has come loose and it's flopping in the wind. But I could see that what I was looking at was two eyes, and these eyes were about 8 inches apart, and they were about the size of hen's eggs. And this thing was standing and ducking, looking at me and looking across the path and jerking back and forth, all in a very fluid, very fast, and very jerky motion. It's hard to explain. It's like how a bird moves its head, like a chicken moves its head. It's very jerky, but it's also smooth. And at first, my brain was trying to put it together. And all I'm seeing is kind of this flashing while I'm noticing its eyes, because as it looks at me and looks across the path, I can see it has a flat face, because when it looks across the path, I don't see the eyes anymore. And like with a deer or a horse or a cow, when they look at you, you see both eyes, and they turn 90 degrees and look the other way, you can still see one eye because their eyes are on the side of their head. Predator's eyes are on the forward facing and on the front of the face. Well, this thing is doing that, and the whole sighting was maybe 7 seconds. It seemed like a lot longer, but it was only about 7 seconds, which actually is a long time. Like if you sit and count to 7, you realize it's a lot longer than you think. But at the last second, it's about midway in its stance, and it turns and squares up to me and stands fully erect as it got. And as soon as it stood all the way up and was squared up to me, it paused for a brief second and then just shrunk down and disappeared. Now, it had to have went to the right, because the trailer, and then there's a fence, a grass field, and a hauler over there. And to the left is the open path. I would have seen it if it would have went to the left.
Before we go any further, explain to us flatlanders what a hauler is.
Okay, a hauler, I believe, I said in another interview it was from water drainage, but that's not it. I believe it's from the tectonic plates. There's a fault line, and I think that's what causes the foothills of Missouri. But basically, if you take two pieces of tinfoil or metal and you push them together to where they start crinkling, that is what the land looks like where I live. So a hauler...
It's like a deep ravine that usually has
exactly.
some kind of stream or in it or something like that. Some kind of drainage type thing. Yeah, okay.
Yes, a lot of them don't have any water, but if it rains, yes, the water does go down there and then drain off. But a lot of them do have streams, but a lot of them don't as well.
How high are the sides of most of these howlers?
Oh, they vary. I mean, they're not mountains. They feel like a mountain because they can be steep, but a couple 100 feet. Now, the farther south you go in Missouri, the bigger they get. Kind of northern Missouri is more flat. Central and southern is where it starts getting really hilly, but probably a couple 100 feet where I'm at is average.
So it's probably kind of similar to southern Ohio and Kentucky, that kind of thing. So yeah, okay, maybe. So but you probably have you a lot of trees, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
The hollers are usually covered in trees.
All right, man. We'll continue with your story. I just wanted to make sure because hollers.
Okay.
That's a term from your neck of the woods, not my neck of the woods. So.
Yeah. Okay. The eyes they started off like a kind of a white. I'm not good with explaining color, but a whitish yellow, and then by the end they were like, and I know this isn't gonna make sense, but it was like a brownish orange or kind of a reddish orange. And I don't think that they changed. People have asked me, well, is it because it was mad it changed? No, I honestly think it was because of, I don't know if it was because of my eyes adjusting or because of the angle and when it finally squared up to me, but what I remember the most is the brownish orange, kind of reddish color. But once it squared up and stopped and when it paused is when my brain, the whole time my brain, I guess, was trying to put together this outline. And I saw that there was a body there. But until it squared up to me and paused, that was the first time I saw the entire outline and like it sunk in that I was looking at the biggest thing I'd ever seen in my life. I mean, this thing was a giant. And
when you say big, how tall you think it was?
I would say.
And how far away was it? You think?
Well, so since then, I mean, between 40 and 60 yards. It was close, and
so it was about half a football field type of thing. So
yeah, and I had a high beams, and I don't know if you've ever driven an '89 GMC pickup, but they've got really good high beams, and I don't know why I didn't see more detail. I don't, but that's what I saw. Now, the outline, the head on this thing was massive. It was massive. It was a rounded head, which is unusual because most people say that they're coned, but I didn't see any sort of, I mean, it was no more coned than my head is. There's a slight arc there, but it was rounded. It wasn't coned. And the shoulders.
Human males have a bit of a slant, if you will, going back on our foreheads. It makes a difference. For females, have a more straightforward forehead. Vertical. Ours leans back a little bit. So, I don't know if you knew that, but that's.
Well, that's kind of what I saw. I mean, which
could mean that actually what you were looking at maybe not been might not have been a male. It might have been a female. I don't know. It could be.
It might have been. If it was, I mean, she was in good shape.
I imagine whether female or male, they're going to have to be extremely good shape for how they move and how the environment, and they're going to have to be nothing but lean machines, man, muscles,
Absolutely. This thing's shoulders. If you take your hand and you put it on the part of your arm that you would get a shot in at the doctor, I don't know what that muscle's called, but the muscles on this thing right there were so large, and like this is what my brain like focused on because it looked so awkward. It was so big, and it was rounded like a basketball. Like it didn't, arc at the top and then flatten out on the sides and then arc back up in at the bottom. I mean, it was a circular shape, just like a ball. And at the bottom, it even curved back up when it went up into the body. I mean, it was huge. It was at least half the width of my truck. I mean, I say it it was 4 feet wide at least across. Like, I felt like this thing could have flipped my truck over. It could have ripped my door off. It could have done anything it wanted to do. It was that big.
Yeah. I can't imagine it. So, but it must have been something like watching a sci-fi movie almost. You know, some kind of. It was. I imagine it was extremely surreal when you were looking at that. What was going through your head, man? I mean, obviously you said you've seen this thing that's the biggest thing you've ever seen, and it's this huge monster.
I remember thinking about my pistol. And
that's interesting. That's logical. That is a very logical response, yeah.
I mean, I don't know what this would have done, but when you're in a high-stress situation like that, you have one thought, but that one thought is actually 3 different thoughts that you understand just with that one thought. Now, I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's like your brain is so fast when your adrenaline's pumping that
it's fight and flight response. And
it is.
Yeah, you're immediate danger, and what do I do in this moment?
Exactly.
It's
and
like
I thought,
like some dudes, or I remember this young man. I was ganged up by some dudes from a different high school. They were like rustlers. And, I already know. I know, but it's like, oh my gosh, I'm in deep trouble here. Well, am I going to get myself out of this? And in the end, I had to fight someone and beat the snot out of them, sent them to the hospital for 3 weeks. But not too proud about that experience. It was actually the last time I ever got in a fight. It was it traumatized me. It really did. Because first I tried to get out of the situation, and I imagine you're like thinking, okay, I'm in trouble here. What am I going to do? Can I, of course, it's such a short amount of time too. So, what I find fascinating too is guys like you and gals, they have this experience. A lot of times it's just a short amount of time, but yet it's emblazed into your memory and your psyche, and so obviously what you were seeing was something that was incredibly frightening. And it's all right to say that you're frightened. It's being normal, man. That's a natural response. So
I've never been that scared in my life. I can honestly say that.
I know a lot of people too. When they see something like that, they get so traumatized that it drives them to tears and everything. He's like, "What did I just see here?" So, tell us more about this. So you see this. He's about 50 yards away. I imagine it's hard to really say. It was far enough away that you probably didn't get a great detail, but at the same token, it was close enough that you recognize you're looking at something huge. And I imagine that I can't even imagine what you're going through. So tell us, what were you going through? And more. Tell us more about this moment here.
So, whenever I thought, and I don't think I've ever talked about this before, whenever I thought about my pistol, I kept it in the glove box in my truck. And so the reason I said all that about when your adrenaline's pumping, you have one thought, it's actual multiple thoughts. When the thought came in my head of my pistol, these are everything that I didn't think about in order. I just knew. But it's hard to explain. It's like your thoughts get layered and you can cram them and understand them as one thought when your adrenaline's pumping. But I thought about my pistol, and I thought, okay, I'm going to have to lean over, undo it, and pull my pistol out. But I know my adrenaline's pumping, so I'm probably going to lean farther than I mean to, so I'm going to have to keep my arm up higher for me overcompensating and leaning too far. That way I don't miss the drawer and I can get my hand in there to get the pistol out. Like, I thought all of that when I thought pistol. It was...
Plus, you're in a truck. You're not in a small car now, so it's...
Yeah, and I didn't get my pistol. It went down, and it must have went to the right. But it was, I mean, it's hard to compare it to another experience because there's just nothing that even comes close. And I've had other encounters, come to find out that these things were around this property and we had been dealing with them for a while and just didn't know it. But nothing came close. I mean, when you see it's a humbling event because you realize you are, I was arrogant enough to believe that I was the biggest, baddest thing in the woods. When I stepped into them, I am the alpha predator, Anything out there, if it wants to mess with me, is going to have a bad day. But when I saw this, I mean, you realize that you might as well be an ant, and this thing can literally do with you as it pleases. I don't know, man. Thinking about it now, it's hard to put into words, but it changed my life, and it changed my life in a negative way for a very long time.
Well, yeah. Well, tell us how did it change your life in a very negative way? What was it? I mean, I imagine it's one of those experiences. At first, you're like, who can I talk to about this? Is anybody going to believe me? Do I believe what just happened? Type of thing. And then there seems like a lot of times too. There's like a psychological or spiritual experience that the people have, where they are so traumatized by this moment that they just they change forever, type of thing. Like you said, it was a humbling experience, but it's more than that. It's almost like when you're threatened, when you're in a life-threatening situation, and something happens, it's kind of like all know guys, buddies were over Iraq or whatever. They come back and I don't know. I mean, like my dad was in the Korean War, and he had to go through what happened with a million Chinese chasing him down, and all that. What he saw that day was the worst carnage and bloodshed of it, and he was never the same. It totally screwed him up. I had a dad that was just a mess because of it. He's passed away a couple of years ago. So, and I know it's not quite. Some people say, well, that's not quite the same thing as seeing people's heads being chopped off and. You don't have to run over your own guys when you're in a tank and all that kind of stuff. But the thing is, but with this experience, it's something that's so short, but yet psychologically changes so many people.
Yes.
And I know it's going to be hard for most people to believe that they could be in the same magnitude as what my father went through, but it seems to be the case. They're being darn close to the fact that how it actually really changes you. I mean, it really, some people just will never ever go back in the woods again because of it. Some people will close up. I mean, I don't even know. I mean, do you even get the possibility to see a shrink and talk about it? What would they think of you? You know what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly. So and it's odd if before this happened, whenever I heard, oh well, so and so had a traumatic experience and they blocked it out. It was usually involved with somebody getting in trouble, and then I did not believe that was a real thing. And I'm not saying that's what happened to me, but for about a year, I didn't think about it, didn't deal with it. It's like I don't know. I didn't think about it until my gut pile got stolen, And then when my gut pile got stolen the following deer season, that is when I started dealing with the problems. And for me, one of the worst things, and just like this deer season, before this deer season, I had a nightmare, and it's a nightmare where I wake up screaming. But once I started looking into this, I started having nightmares. I started having, obviously, couldn't go out in the woods. It took some family members, kind of telling me, Dustin, you need to dust yourself off, get back up on this horse. This is a part of life. This is something you're going to have to get over. Even those that didn't believe that I saw what I saw, they knew something was wrong with me because I stopped shooting. I'm a competitive shooter. That literally was my life. That was my favorite thing to do. And, when my family members saw, he won't even do that, there's something wrong with him. And, after the gut pile got stolen, that got me digging into this. And actually, a family member was with me when that happened, and that's it's like I unlocked Pandora's box with that, wanting to figure out what happened there. And then I told my family what happened the previous summer. It was either summer or just before summer, and they didn't believe me. And even the guy who was with me during the gut pile getting taken didn't believe me until I told him. I'm like, man, do you remember the gut pile? And he goes, oh my gosh. And then he started looking at it with more, and then he ended up having an experience out there, and then my family started having all these other experiences. And but yeah, it changed my life in a negative way. And it has it even got to the point to where whenever I was working, let's say I'm working in the shop, and somebody says my name, and I know they're in the shop with me, okay? Until I lay eyes on them, like, let's say it's my dad. He's like, hey, son, you in here? I'm like, yeah, Dad, I'm over here. And then, like, he walks around a corner. I jump. Like, I know he's there. I know he's coming. He's talking to me, but I would still jump. And that was an odd thing that I didn't know what was going on. I was so jumpy all the time, and I couldn't figure it out. And I mean, I'm better now, but I honestly think that the only thing that helps is talking about what happened to people who understand or have had the same type of experiences. But it affected me in a lot of different ways. And I know there's people out there saying, this guy's a sissy. Well, I might be, but I will say that this is the first time in my life that I was faced with something that I had to truly overcome. And I'm not talking about puberty, getting dumped, asking a girl out, normal stuff. I'm talking about I wanted to crawl in a hole and die versus step back out in the woods and continue to do what I love. It was the first time. And until you're faced with that, it's easy to point a finger, but I'll tell you what, before what happened to me, I would be one of those guys. I'd be laughing at me right now, saying that guy's a sissy. Nothing could take what I love to do away from me. Like, just get over it. I understand, and I don't blame people who will ridicule me over it because they haven't experienced what I have, and I was the same guy, before what happened.
Well, this realm and plane of existence that we are part of, there's a lot of things that we think we know, and things like there's a lot of things like, you sound like a young man, that today that you believe in, that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you're going to realize, wow, it's wrong. It's just part of life. It's just part of life, and you just had a life changing experience. I imagine if I were you, and that happened, I would be constantly looking over my shoulder. I'd be like, What's going on? There's something out there in that door. What's going on? I think twice whenever I go out to the front porch, And I think that's just a natural response to an experience like that. It's a very logical and very instinctual and rational response. If you responded any other way, I would be kind of questioning you and your sanity, first of all, because we're talking about something that's huge. So, yeah, let's talk about the gut pile thing. How did this happen? And how did it win, and how did it, or I guess,
okay.
how is not the right word, but the question would be, just explain this experience that you had to the best of your ability.
Okay, so this happened literally within 20 yards of where the creature was standing and ducking and looking at me and looking across the field at. Now, that's where I gutted the deer. And I will do my best to keep from getting into gory details, but it's hard to explain this thoroughly without getting into some of them. So I'll spare you from what I can, but I know there's people out there that don't like it.
You can be as gory as you want. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
This is we're out here to find out the truth. You know
okay,
what I mean?
so
we want to know. So.
Okay. It was the following deer season, and I was going to go hunting. I believe I came back I think my grandfather was in the hospital, and I could be wrong on that, but I came back to town, and I wanted to go deer hunting. Well, I took my cousin with me, and looking back, it was way late. Like, by the time we would have got to the woods, it would have been dark. But I wanted to go out, and I don't know if I was doing that subconsciously or what, but it was late. We're getting dressed, and so to get out to the field, I have to walk out the front door, walk to the right of the shop, and then walk down that path that thing was on, and that path takes me to the east field. Then I have to walk across the field and get in the woods. So my cousin and I are starting our walk out, and we walk across the driveway around the shop, and we are literally standing right next to where the encounter happened at. And I'm talking to my cousin because he's new to hunting, and I'm explaining some things to him, and he says, "Hey, Dustin, are there horses in that field over there? And there's cattle over there, but no horses." And I'm like, "No, there's cattle." He's like, "Well, then is that a buck?" And I look up, and there's this buck running across the field. So I grunt at it. Doesn't hear me. It was a windy day. I grunt again. Doesn't hear me. And so I basically just yell a grunt out, and it hears me and stops. Well, I shoot him and got him, went over, drug him up and around to the fence there, and then put him in the back corner there where I started to gut him. I pull out his guts, and the guts are very clean unless you gut shot a deer or you do a bad job at gutting them. Guts inside the body are actually clean. There's not blood all over them like horror movies would lead you to believe. So I pull them out, and then I get to the diaphragm, or there's tissue that separates your guts from your heart and your lungs. And I had shot him in the heart, and so his chest cavity was filled with blood. And so the heart's my favorite part of the meat on the deer, and so I get that out, and I pull everything out of there, and I flip the deer over to drain the blood out next to the gut pile. Go inside to get a sharper knife, and then I'm going to have my cousin and we're going to pull my truck, his car down to shine the lights on the deer because it's dark. And so we walk up to the house, which is right there. I put the heart up, get a sharper knife, get in our trucks, and we were gone no longer than 10 minutes. Pull back down there, grab the deer, we drag them closer to the path so our lights can hit it. And I'm sitting there, and I cut off a part of the deer, and I hand it to my cousin, and it was the male part of the deer. And I crack a joke, and I'm like, throw this in the gut pile. And he goes over there, and he's standing there while I'm trying to finish what I'm doing with the deer, and the leg keeps flopping in my way. So I'm like, hey, will you come hold this apart? That way, I can finish chopping the pelvis here. And he's just standing there, and he's like, Dustin, where's the gut pile? I'm like, what are you talking about, man? It's right there. And he's like, no, it's not. And so I was aggravated because I'm like, how can he not see this? Like, there's a huge gut pile over there next to a huge puddle of blood. And so I walk over there and look, and the gut pile is gone. And so the reason I went into the gory details is because we flipped the deer over to drain the blood out next to the gut pile. And now that the gut pile is gone, you can see a crescent shape from where the puddle had ran up to the gut pile. And now that the gut pile's gone, it's seeping in and it's filling that shape in. And it was gone. And when I say gone, there were not bits and pieces everywhere. There was not a drag mark. There was nothing. It was 100% like it was lifted and taken away. And when we went inside to go get the knife, I shut the gate. And so this gut pile was fenced in all the way on all four sides, a 4 or 5 wire barbed wire fence. I believe it's a 5-wire barbed wire fence because they use it for putting the cows in with calves, and they have more wires on there. That way the calves can't get out. And so, it's a good fence too. It's not like an old fence, but it's fenced in on all four sides. And he's like, well, what could have done this? And I'm like, dude, just don't worry about it. Let's just load them up and go. And so we load them up. I take them, and then I get back. And when I get back, I take a flashlight and I start walking circles around because I gotta figure this out, because I'm like, okay, if coyotes took it, coyote kills are brutal. They have bits and pieces over like 100-yard area, and they drag it and fight over it. If a bear or a mountain lion, which we don't have black bear in this area, I think there's been maybe 2 sightings in like the last 50 years. I've never seen one, and I've never seen sign of one in Missouri. But if a bear or mountain lion, black bear or mountain lion, would have eaten this, even then, they would have moved it, they would have shredded it. There would be some sign.
Dustin, how far away were you from this gut pile when it disappeared?
When I walked inside, probably 70 steps to the front door.
Okay, so it happened while you were inside.
Yeah, or walking away. It was.
Well, I'm just trying to, because if it was a coyote or a bear or mountain lion, you would hear them.
Absolutely.
Clearly, you would have heard. So it was even more mysterious about this whole thing is you didn't hear what happened. So whatever took it away had to be big enough to take it away, and also be as agile as it could be.
Yes, and
something that seems to describe this creature that you're talking about. So
my whole thought with it when I got back is, because I was thinking, on my way back, I'm like, okay, deer or coyote, bobcat, mountain lion, bear, either they ate it there, which I don't believe happened because that's pretty much impossible in the amount of time, or they drug it off. And the only way they could have drug it off is drug it up to the fence, went under the fence, and then pulled it through. So I'm going to see drag marks. And so that was my theory. So when I was walking circles, really, I just couldn't wait to get to the fence line because I knew I was going to find sign there. And I walked the fence line and probably, 10 paces out from the fence, and there was not a single drop of blood. There was not a single shred of anything, a drag mark. And so to me, whatever did this picked it up and stepped over the fence because the blood had ran up to one side of the gut pile. So if it put it on the ground, the grass there was yellow. You know, it's November. The grass was yellow. Blood sticks out. I mean, it's you can't miss it. So whatever did this had to have walked over or lifted the gut pile over the fence in order to not, leave the sign on the ground from dragging it underneath. And that's what baffled me. I couldn't understand that. So after that happened, I had to figure out what did it. And that is the first time that I started thinking about what had happened to me and what this might be. That this might be connected to it. The large drunk guy running around our property at night talking might be connected to it. The loud bangs on the house might be connected to it.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about this large drunk guy that you're talking about. That's pretty bizarre. I mean, how far away are you from do you close to anybody to even have a large drunk guy be roaming around?
Yes and no. It's we're right on the outside of town, and we are outside of town. And at the beginning of our driveway, there's a couple of houses, but then the rest of the driveway, I mean, we're all sitting out there on our own. And so for somebody to come down to our property at night, if they drive their car down, we know they're there. People don't drive down our road to turn around. If somebody comes down, it's either somebody we know or somebody that's up to no good. And so it's kind of a convenient thing for like security of your home because the driveway leads to our house and we're far enough away that if our neighbors don't ever mess, we're friends with all our neighbors. It's kind of the rural sense, everybody's friends, everybody helps everybody. That's kind of what it's like out here. And it could have been, sure, absolutely could have been, but what we didn't understand is why if somebody was sneaking down there at night, would they not steal anything? Would they not move anything? Would they not try to break in the house? But they would talk outside and give away their presence. Like
you say we, are you talking about who are you talking about? We.
My family members. So they
heard the voices too. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, my mom heard it one time, and that was the second time that I heard it. The first time was, everybody, I got everybody up in the house because I thought they were intruders, and me and my stepdad got our guns and went outside. Didn't see anybody, so got my nephew and my mom. We all got in the car and we drove around the property looking for somebody. That's the first time it happened. So that's when I say we, because we were trying to figure out what was going on. We had no idea. And this was before what I saw in 2014.
Right. Okay. Well, so that alone would be awfully freaky.
Yes, absolutely.
You're hearing voices outside your home, and it's sounding like a drunk man, which is very interesting in itself. So,
a large drunk guy is what we coined it. Large because of how deep the voice was, and drunk because it sounded like he was speaking English, but I could never understand what he was saying. And the first time he was within no further than 4 feet from me. He was just on the other side of a wall.
How many times did you hear that voice? Have you heard it since the incident of the gut pile?
Yeah. So I've heard it speak 4 times on 2 different occasions. The second occasion, it spoke 3 times. The first occasion, it spoke once.
Well, yeah, and so it must have been pretty loud for you to hear it from the inside.
Yes. It shook the walls when it spoke, the hallway wall.
Oh, that's pretty loud.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Why do you think it's focusing on your house? Are you guys? Is there something there that it wants, food wise or anything like that?
I don't know, and that's something I have spent many nights up late thinking about. The only thing that I can think is that all the other houses at night are lit up. Sometimes this house was, except it had very large dark areas, and a lot of the time my stepdad wouldn't keep any of the lights on. And so unless you knew there was a house down there, if you were at the very beginning of the driveway, you would never know there was a house down there. Because with no lights on, I mean, it's just pitch black. Because we're basically, like, the houses, there's a couple of houses at the beginning of the driveway, and then it's like my stepdad built a house in the middle of a field. You know, it's off on its own. And I don't know if it's because they feel comfortable, because it's farther away from the other houses, and they get bored, and so they mess with us. And one thing I do know for sure that I will argue with people about is once they know that you know that they're there, it changes the game, because they come after you. They mess with you. It's like when they know you know they're there, that you're the target of their little sick, sadistic games that they play.
Which is very interesting. It's almost like they maybe have some kind of psychic abilities that they, or maybe not. I don't know. Why would they do that? Why do you think they would do that?
From, I don't know. I've thought about it a lot. Like, I'm a middle child. So my older brother knew, he was 5 years older than me. So that's a pretty big difference. I was never able to physically dominate him. And he and his two friends beat the crap out of me every day. You know, they said they were making me tougher. And
I know about it. My brother went to states in wrestling and got a football scholarship, and he was 10 years older than me, and I think that's what he would do to me.
Same thing. my brother got a football scholarship, but it's
I turned out to be a musician, so a musician and an artist.
Well,
yeah. Although the funny thing is, I'm the only one that ever won any championships in football. So.
There you go. There you go.
But go ahead.
But so like my older brother would mess with me because he knew he could. He knew that when Mom came home, that all he had to do was give me that look of, if you open your mouth, you're going to get twice as bad tomorrow when I'm babysitting you, you know? And so he messed with me because now my brother loves me and I love my brother, so I'm not trying to paint a bad picture, but I've thought about that. Why would they do this?
Brothers bond, so
yeah. But these things, it's like I'm a little brother, and they know they can dominate me, and they know that they scare me, and so they do it. I don't know. It's like they do it because they can. I think they're bored. I have a certain job that I don't want to say what it is, but when it comes to sitting and watching people, it's very easy to learn who does what, who drives what, who leaves at this time of day, or who leaves, you know. And when you sit and watch somebody, because I believe that's what they do, and I have evidence of it, but they sit and watch, and they know that I'm the one that saw them, okay? They also know that they took the gut pile from me. And so from then on, it's like when I'm home, it's if we're going to mess with the house, we're messing with Dustin. You know what I mean? I don't know why they do it.
Maybe they associate you with the gut pile and the food. And so,
maybe.
Maybe that's what they're waiting based on. That's what a lot of animals do, right? I mean,
absolutely, that 100% could be it.
Yeah.
That's I never thought of it as me giving it to them, because I was in the situation. But I've never really thought about that. That absolutely could be it, because they got my gut pile that they think,
They saw you, kill the deer, gut the deer, and so they associate you with food.
That absolutely could be it. See, it's funny, as a human being, you associate, because the little games that they play, it feels sadistic. It feels threatening. That's how I take it. But it could just be because they got my gut pile and they're wanting more food. You're absolutely right. I mean, that's I can't believe I've never thought about it like that.
And the other thing too is it could be also it's like you are more heightened. Your awareness is more heightened, so you're noticing things that you didn't notice or you took for granted before. So, Occam's razor. You know what I mean? Always choose the most logical, most reasonable, simplest answer. So, if we're dealing with animals here, although they seem like they're very intelligent, I mean, beyond what we can comprehend, still, I mean, they are animals. So, they're going to behave like animals, So, and I have to tell you, if you fed them a gut pile, that's a 5-course meal. You know what I mean? You're the chef, man.
Absolutely. There's another thing
which makes it interesting too. As far as and those who know more about this subject, highly recommend not doing it. But I would imagine in your circumstances, if you were to start feeding these things, they'd probably be more. I don't know. I imagine you'd have more experiences, but they also, I mean, with kind of creatures like this, the experiences probably turn sour, because we're talking something that's beyond even a bear, Kodiak bear, really. So if you started feeding them, the next thing you know, they'd probably be tearing down your parents' place or whatever. So
that's exactly right. And the problem is I never wanted these encounters. I've had other people say, "We'll start feeding them." Well, no, because if I fed them one time and I got all this from that, I don't want any. I'm not going to make it worse. They're not going to get anything from me. And I've told my mom and stepdad, don't throw scraps out at night, please, because I asked them when I was trying to figure out what was going on. I'm like, dude, I was asking my mom, does my stepdad throw scraps out at night? She's like, well, he used to, or he does every once in a while. I'm like, what does he throw out? And she said just the peels of like a watermelon, but they don't get touched. And so I chalked that up as well. That's not it, because they don't take them. So I don't know, man. And now that I think about it, squirrel's my favorite game meat, and where I clean my squirrel is where whatever it was spoke the second time. But they used to have a dog. It was my stepbrother's dog that stayed outside, and he came and he got married and moved into his old place and came and got his dog, and these things started happening after that. So I think they were around before because I had some other things happen, but I don't think they were coming up close to the house until the dog left. But if I wasn't there, because people ask me, well, how often did it happen? Well, it wasn't like every week or every day, but it's like when it was happening, it would happen, a time or two or three, and then it wouldn't for a while. But at the same time, my mom and stepdad, I just don't think they notice. Like, I think more things have happened that they just don't pay attention to. which I think is the answer to dealing with these things. You've just got to ignore them.
Well, it seems to me that that's, if you look at native culture, you look at even earlier times, a century ago, a lot of folks, I imagine they dealt with it, but they dealt with it as it's just part of life. You know what I mean? You got to deal with, you got to cope with whatever is in front of you and what's around you. You got to have. But that's interesting though. It's talked about why don't you shoot them? Why do you think that is? That there are no bodies per se. Have you ever thought about that?
Shooting them, and if there's bodies, where are they? Yeah, I've thought about it. I believe that I believe that if you hit this thing in the right spot, that it's going to take a dirt nap. However, I think if you do that, you have a very high chance of any other one that is most likely around coming after you, and you're not going to make it out. There's a spot that SWAT team members train for, and they call it getting your walnut. And what it is, people think, we'll shoot it in the throat, we'll shoot it in the head, we'll shoot it in the chest. Honestly, I wouldn't shoot at the chest unless it was running at me, and you're just trying to put rounds on target. But if it was standing, or I had a good, steady, clear shot, I'd put that round right in its mouth. And the reason you aim for the mouth is if it's squared up to you and you shoot it in the mouth, in a human being, in the back of the mouth, there's a target basically the size of a walnut. And that's why, the SWAT team that I've trained with and shot with, that's what they called it, getting your walnut. But like if somebody's holding somebody hostage, okay, and you shoot them in the head, if they have a gun to the hostage head, their nerves twitching, they could pull the trigger. So if you have to shoot, you shoot them in the mouth. And what that does is that severs the brainstem from the spine, and it cuts off. And so literally people, police snipers or SWAT snipers that have done this and achieved this, the guys they shot, when they fell, their body locked up so much that their feet lifted up and stayed at a 90-degree angle as they fell, instead of staying on the ground until they fall all the way back, because it locks you up. That is where I would shoot one of these things. And I do believe if you put a round right there, or in their head for that matter, but then you start playing with what caliber does it take, I do believe that these things are going to drop. 100%. But I'll tell you this, I am very confident in my shooting. I shoot 1,000 yards competitively. I actually went and shot today in northern Missouri, but I don't want to be the one to squeeze that trigger. No, sir.
Yeah, you don't want to take the chance. Well, I just wonder, because you hear over and over again this people, competent folks with guns like yourself. There's something that happens, like maybe psychologically, they freeze up and they never pull the trigger for whatever reason. And I don't know if it's because of just the fear of God that this creature puts in a man. He's just too afraid the consequences.
Absolutely. It's the fear.
And usually with creatures like this, there's always going to, not necessarily. It depends on what time of the year, I guess. But I imagine there are times, if they're social creatures, where there's going to be more than one. And I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to think about it. But so back to this. So the gut pile, probably, and other things. Being a hunter, and obviously these creatures are the bare minimum of omnivores, but an opportunist. They are apparently they like their meat, and this seems to be that they're hunting type of creatures. So, yeah. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the difficulty of actually.
You're going to try, go all the way. Otherwise, don't even start. If you're going to try, go all the way. This could mean losing girlfriends, wives, relatives, jobs, and maybe your mind.
If you don't know, you should take it.